Doug, there is a court case going on right now involving a young woman and her right to own property in BC. Can you just explain what's happening?
Yeah, she bought a condo with her family's money about 2 years ago in Langley. She's a Chinese national, foreign student, or international student, and she's launched this case, which I believe she hopes becomes a class action suit, saying that foreign buyers tax, when it was introduced by the Liberals, is illegal because it discriminates against people based on their nationality. And she also says that it just makes her feel like she's been stereotyped as a bad foreign person, particularly bad Chinese person. That's her case. The case was in court last week being heard, so we'll see what.
And what type of argument is she making? Because it has to be more than this policy makes me feel this way, right?
Yeah.
So what is she arguing in court?
It is that Canada and BC is not allowed to discriminate against foreigners based on their nationality. It's a real stretch because most countries do have some sort of restrictions on foreign ownership property. So I'm surprised it's almost getting this much attention, but she's had affidavits brought forward by academics saying that the policy is sort of resembles xenophobia and it might have a racist component, which is her argument. And we'll just see how it's going to go. It's already been in courts for about 5 days.
Sure. You touched on policies in other countries around the world,
yeah,
and sort of how there are restrictions to foreign ownership there. Can you outline what other countries are doing?
Yeah, I mean, some people in the newsroom are saying, well, what about reciprocity? Because China's got way more tight restrictions against foreign ownership than Canada does and the BC does. You have to, one rule is you can't actually own property in China. Only the government owns the land. But even if you're allowed to buy a building, say, or a house or whatever, you have to live there for a year and you have to live in the house. In Shanghai, the rules change throughout China. In Shanghai, you have to be married to be able to buy a house as a foreigner. Another place you have to stay for 5 years. Another place in China you can't rent if you're a foreigner. So those are way tighter restrictions than Canada and BC's ever dreamed up. And some people say that's sort of a counter argument. Like if it's good enough for China, why can't Canada do it? And I've done a kind of a rough survey. I'd say most countries of the world do have some restrictions on foreign ownership. Some of them are kind of subtle. Like Mexico, you can't actually buy property within 100 kilometers of the ocean. You can maybe, as a foreigner, buy it through a trust, but that gets quite complicated.
Do you think some of this is happening because Canada is a multicultural country? Mm-hmm. Here, everyone is supposed to be welcome. Mm-hmm. Everyone is supposed to have access to opportunity. Everyone is supposed to, be allowed to, express their wealth however they see fit. Right? And now the narrative around property prices, home ownership has kind of focused on one particular group. So maybe the narrative in the media or the narrative in coffee shops, is impacting this idea of everyone should be allowed.
Yeah, it's certainly complicating the issue. Like Canada is a very, very open country compared to almost every country in the world in terms of openness to investment and openness to immigration. In terms of percentage of the population, we have almost more immigrants than any country in the world, except maybe Australia or Switzerland, actually. And that's out of 167 countries. Most countries don't even take immigrants, right? So, and the surveys keep showing we're a tolerant country, and I sort of believe that. But that's relatively speaking. Some other countries aren't very tolerant at all. But the housing crisis in Metro Vancouver has got people upset. Everybody here, people of color or non-people of color, immigrant or not, if you don't already own property, you're in a lot of trouble because we're the most unaffordable city in Canada ever, and one of the most unaffordable cities in the world too. Even only Hong Kong's worse than us. So people are upset.
Sure.
And my argument is that most Canadians aren't racist. They don't attack people, especially as, by their color. but I think there are small portion that do. But there's a lot of tension in the air. And some of the biggest housing affordability activists, some of the biggest supporters of the foreign buyers tax in BC are Chinese people, actually, right? Justin Fang and stuff like that. The HALT group is made up mostly of people of color. So that, a lot of people, Andy Yan and stuff like that, say that goes against the argument that the foreign buyers tax is kind of racist or xenophobic.
Sure. Where does this case go next?
Yeah, now we wait for the judge. He's had all sorts of affidavits handed to him from both sides, and we just have to wait now. I'll be shocked if it is approved and goes to the next step, which would make it a class action suit, which could get very serious because it could end up costing taxpayers a lot of money having to give back the foreign buyers tax.